Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live stream today. I'm here with Maria from ApplicantLab.com. I'm Shovik. I'm a second year student at the Michigan Ross School of Business. Hopefully, by now, you know who I am. Um, uh, we have been in a lot of really strange and interesting times with both the GMAT and the MBA. But I wanted to take a break from the GMAT. I took the GMAT this week, and it was fun. We did two like GMAT online stuff type videos, one of which had you, Maria, on it. So feel free to go check those out. Those were wildly popular. We had like 500 people live. So I wanted to take a break today because one of our forums have been getting a lot of attention, where people get admitted to multiple schools and they get on this debate on which school is better, which school makes more sense. And I thought that maybe I get an expert, and Maria, that's who you are, and to truly weigh in, because a lot of the debates are by current students, alums, which have a lot of merit, but I want to get some more validation about some of these school choices. So we took two of those examples, but before we jump into them, Maria, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Oh, sure. Hi, Shovik. Nice to meet everyone. In case you haven't heard of me or seen me before, my name is Maria, and I am the founder of ApplicantLab.com, and it's an online platform that mimics the exact same advice that an admissions consultant will give you, but it costs several $1,000s less. I am a graduate of Harvard Business School, and I am entering my 17th year this year of giving admissions advice. So I started off as a volunteer in the admissions office at Harvard Business School, and it was just sort of a volunteer thing that I did for fun, and I never dreamt it would be my job, but here we are. Yeah, and I'm excited to get started today.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Cool. So we're going to look at two specific profiles, and I'm just going to give out a disclaimer that we know some stuff about these profiles, but we don't know them personally, right? So there may be things that they did not write about. There may be things we don't know. So we are trying sort of our best to speculate and have some fun. Maria has years of admission experience, and I have no years of any experience that's relevant to this. But well, that didn't stop me from doing my summer or anything else in my life. So why stop now? So we'll jump into the first profile, Maria. So this person is deciding between Yale School of Management and Berkeley Haas. I'm going to take a minute to just read this, but I'm going to read it out loud for some of you who want to read it in your head. Go ahead. So basically, both of them live in the New York area, him and his girlfriend, and they are looking at a post-MBA geography around in the East Coast. He has 6 years of work experience in marketing, especially in marketing consumer startups, mostly in food, and a little bit of tech and I guess beauty. Motivations for doing the MBA, just to get some fluency and business acumen, so to speak. And then the eventual long-term goal is to continue in marketing and get to the executive track. And a few alternative goals is also looking at venture capital or looking at the whole entrepreneurship and startup route. Immediately after MBA, he wants to do big tech, which is why I chose this profile, because I have a little bit of experience there. So FANG, like, which is basically Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, but I think big tech is more than FANG. Or a more corporate, more businessy setting in marketing, like CPG or consulting. So I'm guessing he is not really throwing anything down the line. So it's a little bit vague, which I like, because I think you should be open to opportunities. No scholarship in either school, but he did his undergrad in Cornell and has a pretty extensive network within the Northeast region. So that's it. That's all that we know about the profile. By the way, if you are on the live chat, feel free to share thoughts about him and where you think he should go. But Maria, I'm going to start with you. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, so in a situation like this, I often find myself telling people, the good news is you can't go wrong. The bad news is you can't go wrong. So that makes the decision that much harder. And so I think one of the things that I was thinking about is, look, I often tend to, when all else is equal, I tend to tell people, like, look, go where personally you think you want to build your life more, because the fact is that Yale it's not in New York City, but it is relatively close to New York City. It's certainly closer to New York City than Haas is. And so in terms of, if the family is there and if the girlfriend is there, going to Yale will allow him to absolutely maintain those relationships and assuming that these quarantines ever lift up, see people more often, and things like that. So if all else were equal, I would say choose Yale just because it will let your life, school and career, that's one part of life, but that's not all of life. So I would say, look, for the geographic reasons, stick to Yale. But, one thing that's interesting is before this call, often when I'm advising people on which school to choose, even before they get in, right, when they're trying to choose which school to apply to, I often give them the exercise of looking at the career reports and really digging into the electives that each school offers. Because at the core, those core business classes that he talked about, right, accounting, finance, analytics, those are going to be the same no matter where you go, right? It's not like the rules of accounting are different between Yale and Haas, right? It's the same stuff.
Yeah.
But where the schools really start to differ pretty dramatically, once you start digging in, is in the electives that they offer. And also beyond that, even then, the tech clubs, every school today has a tech club, right? But some schools have a tech club that, it's like 20 people and they kind of get together and, I don't know, they don't really do a whole lot. And then other schools have a tech club where they do like a conference every year and they invite, Jeff Bezos or whatever, right? So there's a really big difference, and when you get into those more specific areas of study, there can be a pretty dramatic difference. So I don't know, can I share my screen?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I'll just do my entire screen. Okay. So when you look at the employment report here, I pulled up the employment report for Yale. And so we've got the full-time employment report for the most recent graduating class last year. And you see that 12% of the class, let's round that up to 13% of the class ended up in the technology space. But now when we pull up Berkeley, Haas, 32% ended up in the technology space. So that's not quite it's more than twice. It's been a while. You took the GMAT more recently, so your math is better than mine. But I mean, this is not a minor. We're not talking 13% versus 16%, right? We're talking 13% versus 33%. Right. So, I do think that Yale absolutely provides opportunities to get jobs in tech. I actually have two former clients who are first years at Yale this year. One of them got an internship at Microsoft, and the other one got one at Amazon. So you can absolutely get that job in technology. But I think in terms of, he has to ask himself, like, how committed is he to the technology space? Because he did seem a little, not wishy-washy, but like, maybe consulting, maybe FANG, maybe something else. Right. And so if he knows that technology is what he definitely wants to do, I think that if we just look at the career outcomes, it would seem that Haas would have that stronger placement, those stronger relationships. It makes sense. It's in the Bay Area, and so it's just physically closer to a lot of these programs. I think another thing we can do is we can take a quick look at the electives, and this is where on a live video. On YouTube, we're not going to have a chance to really dig in. But what I would advise this young man to do is to like pull up these different electives. Think about where are the gaps. So these I pulled up, these are the technology management electives at Yale. And really ask himself, like, okay, of the things I think I want to do career-wise, where are those gaps? So I think you said that he does marketing for a startup. So if he wanted to switch into some sort of a product management role, it would be really important for him in order to do well in those product manager interviews and not fall flat on his face, he would really have to learn a bit about software architecture and he doesn't have to learn how to code necessarily, but he definitely needs to understand and develop an intuition for how software is developed. So I would definitely look, and we don't have time to do this now, but I love Yale. I think Yale's a wonderful program, but we've got competitive strategy, which seems pretty generic, strategy, technology, and war, which is a little too specific. Startup founder. Okay, so management of software development. Here's one class, right? Management of software development is useful. Advanced management of software development. Okay, that's two classes. Understanding technology disruption. That sounds again like more of like a strategy class as opposed to like, let's look at the industry. and how technology disrupts an industry, as opposed to let's talk about how do we implement technology to give our firms competitive advantage. And then digital strategy. So, from my perspective, right off the top of my head, and this is very cursory, but it looks like there's pretty much like maybe 3 electives that are super, very relevant and directly relevant to him. Right. Versus let's look at Haas's electives in the same sort of technology, their area of emphasis in technology. Product design, definitely applicable. The business models, if he's already worked in marketing, he might be familiar with the business models. Then managing the new product development process, applied innovation, project management case studies, design, evaluate, and scale development technology. So look at the difference, right? Yale's language, it seemed to be more around the strategy. Like, let's talk about what are the overarching implications of technology and the future of an industry. Versus this looks like, okay, let's talk about a technology. How do we design it? How do we figure out if we like it? And then once we're there, how do we grow it? And so startup lab, media new and otherwise, if he's an advertising guy, he probably doesn't have, he probably already understands new media, at least on some level. So it seems to me like, for me, even though I'm a big proponent of, letting your personal life be the thing that guides you in what you do, if tech is what he really wants to do, I kind of get the sense that Haas might be the better choice. And that's my speech. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think it's different a little bit if you want to do tech versus if you want to remain open. So I'm a big fan of staying open before you go to business school, because like all of these stuff, like I want to do consulting, I want to do venture capital, I want to do tech. These are all in hypothetical. Only once you go to business school, actually meet these people and figure out, as the new kids say, what your tribe is. So. If you really want to be in the CEO or a COO track in specific to marketing, which sort of basically means you want to be a CMO of something, I think the 2 better ways to go about it is either you do marketing and you really understand consumer products and stuff like that, or you do product management, because product management works very closely with marketing. And in a lot of tech companies, product management is actually marketing. So in that sense, if that's the path this person wants to take, I do think Haas is definitely a better option. Now, having said that, I feel like Yale is probably a bit more well-rounded. And I could be wrong, but Yale has this access to the overall university, and also like a lot of consulting and a lot of new finance companies. I don't think Berkeley, then it's probably a self-fulfilling prophecy. Most people who go to Berkeley actually wants to work in tech, so it sort of gives them this laser-sharp focus on tech and maybe not so much on everything else.
Right. No, I think that's a really good point. So, I do agree with you. I think if he knew for sure, like, man, tech is where it's at, product management, I want to, if he just wants to stay in marketing, then we need to evaluate what are the different marketing electives, right? If he wants to sort of move into a senior marketing position and then elevate himself from there, that's one thing, right? That would be more like growth hacking classes and branding classes and all those things. But if he definitely was like, no, the way I want to build influence within the tech community is I want to become a product manager, right? Because eventually I want to become an entrepreneur, because a product manager role is a great training ground to eventually become an entrepreneur, because you're essentially kind of you're managing a day-to-day product, right? You're seeing what resonates with users, what doesn't resonate with users. And so you really are getting some pretty pragmatic experience. So if he definitely was like, nope, it's about product, it's about tech, I want to marry tech, I love it so much, I want to, then I would say Haas for sure, but he does sound a little on the fence. So because of that, I feel like Yale might be the better, just because I would hate for him to go to Haas and be like, yay, I'm Mr. Tech, hooray. And then he gets there and he's like, you know what? I actually really miss the beauty industry or whatever, one of those previous industries that he was in. And I really wish I had and I miss my girlfriend and I miss my family. So it's, I think he would benefit from, first of all, digging into the electives, as we said a minute ago, in both marketing, product, and everything. And asking himself, like, okay, which classes do I think I most want to take? But then also, don't ignore that personal. I definitely know people who were long distance bi-coastal during those 2 years of the MBA, and they made it work, and they came out the other end, and they're married today, but it's also not easy. So if he really is more of a generalist, maybe Yale could be because it's not like you can't get into tech from Yale.
Oh, of course you can.
But
I saw a few people at Apple and Amazon and Microsoft. So yeah, they definitely exist. I think sorry, Maria, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think where he might need to, if he does go to Yale, I wonder if he would have to take it upon himself, though, to take more Coursera classes on his own, perhaps in order to be ready for those interviews, if he does want to switch to a more technical role, techie management role.
Yeah, I have two more things to round this out before we jump into the next profile, but Maria, feel free to interrupt me. The first thing is the path to marketing from consulting. And I think, and I'm reflecting on someone who sort of explored consulting both before and during business school. You don't often really know what your exit is going to be before you go into consulting. I mean, sure, a lot of these exit opportunities are great, and they are truly, truly great, and people value consulting experiences a lot. But it's very hard to say going into consulting where you will exit, because a lot of your exit opportunities will depend on your past projects when you are a consultant. And you don't know that you're going to get a marketing project. Maybe after a couple of years, you have enough of a pull to sort of convince your staffing manager that that's where you want to be. But at the beginning, man, you're a workhorse. So you will be where you are needed to be more than where you want to be. And that's true for almost all consulting companies, because they hire generalists, and they specifically hire generalists for this purpose. So I'm not a big fan of going into consulting knowing that this is specifically where you want to exit. Most of my consulting friends treat their jobs as a second attempt at business school, which is also going to give them a very stressful but a really well learning experience that sort of gives them more clarity on what they really want to do. So that's my hot take on consulting. But the other thing that I wanted to mention was that if you really want to do tech, Yale will probably have just as many opportunities for big tech. But if you want to do small, more niche, and more real companies that you will probably learn a lot more, but you'll also grind a lot more, like startups, for example, or like unicorns, whatever. I think Berkeley will give you exponentially more opportunities, not just because of the location, but because of the engineering school, the alumni. So I think Berkeley wins there, definitely.
Yeah, to add a little bit of a very specific anecdote to your sort of caveat about consulting. I had a former client years ago who was from the entertainment and media industry out here in LA, went to an elite East Coast school and was like, oh, I'm going to do consulting afterwards. And I remember contacting him after graduation, and he was in, I believe, Nebraska. Wow. 4 days a week on a consulting client. It was some sort of a manufacturer for parts in the trucking industry, if I'm not mistaken. And he had been there for 4 months. And so I feel like, I think people just look at the prestige of the consulting companies, which is a valid thing to look at. And they look at the money that consulting pays, which is also a very valid thing to look at. But I don't think they stop and ask themselves, am I okay really being placed on any project? And fortunately, look, the good news is that, like you said, the exit opportunities can be there. Like, this person eventually made his way back to Los Angeles, to the entertainment industry, after taking a bit of a detour in consulting. But it's not like you show up in consulting and you're like, hey, I'm Little Miss Digital Media, so put me on the Netflix case. Like, that's not how it works. And I was having an email conversation just yesterday with someone who's gotten into business school who wants to start a family almost immediately after business school. And so she was saying, well, I think I want to do consulting, and also start a family after business school. And I was like, look, you can do that. Absolutely. And there are women out there who are amazing, and God bless them. They can do that. But if you're going to do that, know what it's going to mean, right? Yeah. Know that you will be on the road probably 4 days a week from your baby. Know that there are going to be logistics around, the food and all kinds of stuff that, really think that through, because I think people get a little blinded. Just like a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the rankings, right? Sometimes people just get sort of blinded by these rankings and they don't stop and think, is this actually what I want? It's the same thing with consulting. I think people get blinded by it, and then they don't stop and think like, okay, what if my apartment is in New York, but I'm going to Nebraska 4 days a week? And I'm working on a project that I don't care about in an industry I do not care about. And it's winter. And it wasn't just like, it wasn't like Omaha. Like he was in a tiny town, like out in the rural. So just sort of keep that in mind. Consulting is excellent. I'm not trying to bash it, but it does have, as I like to quip, there's a reason why they hire people every year. If it were this dream job that was really as perfect as everyone sort of seems to think it is at first glance, then no one would ever quit.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't have people they wouldn't need to hire people every single year because no one would ever quit every single year. So that's my little, just be aware of what you're getting into and do it for sure if it's what you want to do, but go in with a realistic viewpoint.
Great. So that's all we have for this one. We're going to move to the next profile. Okay, so this is let me just add to the stream. Yeah, this is also this profile also involves Yale. So Yale win today. So the goals for this particular woman is to join a big tech company. So that's great. As you can see, Maria, I've not been unbiased at all in selecting these profiles. My background is that I work as a senior manager at a small tech startup in New York City and manage a team of 4 in ops and project management. And then this person, I think why I really like this post on GMAT Club was that this person sort of weighed in the pros and cons for Kellogg, or what she thinks are the pros and cons for Kellogg, which I love because it sort of gives me more color to analyze the profile. So for Kellogg, she says, I feel the tech placement is stronger and there's a deeper tech alumni network, the bigger class, and probably more resources and diversity in electives. Overall, business school brand name is stronger. The negatives for Kellogg is no money, no scholarship, taking out loans, and it's also further away from family and fiance, and nervous about moving to Evanston, which everyone should be. And then for Yale, she has a $70,000 scholarship, which is, by the way, a lot of money. A smaller class size means a closer knit community, and then being able to stand out from the crowd when recruiting because it's a smaller class. I'm not sure about that, but we'll get into that. And then negatives for Yale: smaller network, especially in tech, and then not a super strong recruiting track record for tech. And then especially because she wants to transition to a PM role, and PM roles tend to be super competitive. She wants to understand a little bit more about the difference between Kellogg and Yale. So that's it. That's our profile. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and ask your thoughts again.
Yeah. So in this case, I actually have a stronger opinion. I'm not quite so wishy-washy because she definitely seems to have a much more clear path of where she wants to go in her career. And so I do think, if I start sharing my screen, oh, sorry, I have to click this first. There we go. Okay. So if we start sharing,
it'll fix itself once you.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, wow, we're in the Matrix. This is great. Okay, so look, let's just do the same exercise we did before. Here's the Kellogg employment reports, and 25% of the class goes into technology, again, versus Yale's, I believe it was 13. So it's about twice as many people go into technology. Oops. Right. And now, again, let's go. I'm not going to rehash the Yale course offerings, but when we look at what Kellogg offers, I mean, this is I think it's a really strong offering, right? They have product management and product marketing management as 2 separate things. Now, this is important, I think, because I don't think a lot of people before they get to business school or before they enter the tech ecosystem, they may not realize that product management and product marketing are actually 2 different. They just hear the word product, and I think they just sort of mishmash them and mush them together. But in fact, product management and product marketing are slightly different different roles. And so first of all, the fact that Kellogg even breaks those things out into they're so thoughtful about technology that they've got 2 separate tracks.
Which makes so much sense, by the way.
Of course. Well, they are. I know that they hate being known as the marketing school, but it really is something that they're good at, and they're more than just marketing, of course. But it's if we look at like these classes that they have, I mean, so sort of at the foundational classes up here, we've got an entrepreneurial perspective on how larger companies can think about product management, introduction to software development. Again, I believe I said with the last gentleman, he may need to bolster his software knowledge on his own, maybe through Coursera or what have you. Technology marketing, digital marketing analytics, like if we keep going down, new venture discovery, customer analytics and AI, corporate entrepreneurship. These classes are just so there's just so much to choose from. And if she even wants to go over here into like business operations and strategy, look, there's a specific class here, for example, on blockchain, right? Blockchain is one of those like sexy new exciting terms that everyone's talking about. I don't know that I saw a class at Yale.
Everybody keeps talking about it, but nobody knows what it is.
Nobody knows what it is. That's why you need to take a class, I guess. E-commerce and digital marketing, right? Like, I don't think I saw a class that was specific at Yale to e-commerce. I may be wrong, right? But it seems to me like there's such a difference in terms of the offerings and in terms of the outcomes for these two. And also, again, looking at the logistics and the personal life, yes, Chicago is far away from New York, but it's not as far away as Berkeley. So it's definitely, it would be a challenge for sure on the personal front, but I don't think it would be quite so dramatic.
I mean, I have pretty strong opinions about this too. And I mean, I go to Michigan. I mean, well, I went to Michigan. I already graduated, but I do feel like Kellogg is what I would recommend as the complete school. I think Kellogg sort of has everything, and they do it really, really well. I think they're the true consultant. They're not generalists, and they have a thing for everybody, which I really appreciate. And I think Kellogg has upped its tech game a lot. So, for example, when I went to Apple over the summer, I realized there's a Kellogg ghetto. Like, there's so many people from Kellogg. It was ridiculous. And just as one anecdotal data point, Apple tends to be super selective about their MBA recruiting. They go to Kellogg. They go to the campus in Evanston. They don't go to Berkeley.
Wow, I didn't know that.
A lot of people end up, getting hired at Apple from Berkeley, but Apple doesn't physically go there. It's in their backyard.
Right.
So that just goes on to show that, like the recruiters at Apple would move from a coast to almost a coast to hire people from Kellogg. And I think Kellogg does a stellar job. And also the product management, product marketing distinction that you just mentioned, I want to add to that a little bit. A lot of us, when we go to business school, is like, yeah, fine, we'll be great product managers. And then nobody would get interviews because they don't have an engineering background, or they really didn't show that they have technical chops. A lot of business school recruiting can be hacked together, but product marketing really cares about what you actually did before business school. So I would keep that with a grain of salt, that it's really hard to break into product management if you were not an engineer or if you haven't done stuff that is engineering-esque. And one very common way for people to venture into product management without being an engineer is actually starting with product marketing. And Google does this famously. Like, a lot of people would go to Google, become PMMs, which is a much more business schooly thing. And then you sort of, learn on the job, and then you transition to a product management role. And Google will put you to the same, like rigorous interview process, even if you currently work there. So that's sort of what I think. Product management is tough, but I do think opportunities at Kellogg are a lot more than Yale. That's just what it is. And I think Kellogg also wins if you are not sure about product management. Like, let's say you want to dip your toes in consulting, and Kellogg is the consulting darling. So I would go to Kellogg regardless of whatever your goals were. What do you think of the scholarship, though? Like, do you think it's worth losing out on $70,000?
So it's funny. I get asked this question a lot by applicant lab users who have, been successful getting into multiple programs, and sometimes they get scholarships at some schools and not at others. And it's one thing I do always caveat people is like, when you're asking other people for advice, always realize that everyone has a bias, even if they don't know that they have a bias, right? So most people, if they chose one path and they think it worked out for them, that's what they're going to urge you to do. So I want to preface this by saying that I have a bias because I turned down a significant scholarship at another school to go to my business school. Because the way I looked at it was, I was in my mid-20s at the time. I've got 30 more years of work, 40 more years of my career before I retire, God willing, right? And hopefully I'll live that long, right? And so when I think about what I wanted to get out of business school, and where I wanted it to take my career, and I thought about my career in the long term, for me, it wasn't a $70,000 difference. It was significantly higher. But I sort of divided out that number, that big, huge, scary number. And I thought, okay, but if I divide that number by 30 years, let's say it was $150,000, right? So divided by 30 years, that's $5,000 a year. It comes out to less than $500 a month. Would I value the education? Like $500 a month is like a luxury car payment. So would I be willing, these are sort of the mental exercises I did. Like, would I be willing in the future to forgo driving a much fancier car in exchange for having the MBA experience that I want? And for me, that was the sort of the trade-off that I did. That was the sort of mental thing that I thought in the long, if you look at just, if you only get 2 years of work experience after your MBA and then you never work again, then I would say, wow, the ROI is a pretty tough one. But I think when you look at the longer term, you're still young and there's a long ways to go. And so I do think that you will make that up over the next few decades of your life.
I actually think that I agree with you. I sort of gave up on scholarships on a few schools too, and I think so. I'm biased too, I guess. But I think looking at the scholarship right now is a really short-term way to think of what your potential is going to be. That's not to say that Kellogg will offer an experience that's worth $70,000 more. For me, going to business school and picking business school is an exercise in minimizing risk. And it's a little bit ironic because I chose to minimize risk by paying more money, which is the opposite of minimizing risk. So I don't really know how to explain it. But when I chose Ross, one of the reasons I picked Ross is because what if my plan A, which was tech, doesn't work out? Do I have a plan B, and does Ross do well on that plan B, which was consulting? And that was so much more important for me because I know things don't often work out. And, I got lucky, but I got lucky. Not every time your business school outcomes, just like your applications, are going to be based on your effort and your pedigree and your background. It's great if it is, but
who knows? Yeah. It's a bit of a crapshoot, absolutely. Both admissions and the job thing, you never know. No one's a slam dunk for anything.
Right. So anyway, so those are the two profiles that I wanted to pick out. But Maria, I'm totally open to you talking about any stories from your clients this year or last.
I have so many. Yeah, I think I wanted to touch base super quick back on this not hypothetical candidate. She's not hypothetical. She's just anonymous. The one that we were just talking about. The one point that she made of being the big fish in a small pond, right? Well, maybe I should go to Yale because I'm going to be one of the fewer tech people there. And I can appreciate where that logic comes from, but I don't think it holds necessarily a lot of water, right? Because I think, first of all, companies are going to hire the best person for the job. It's not like they have allocated like, okay, we've got 2 spots. We're going to hire 2 people from Yale and we're going to hire 3 people, like maybe like the huge consulting firms. But even then, I don't think that they're like, it's 6 people from this school and 4 people from that school and 2 people. I think they're just looking for whoever's the best person to fill that job spot. So to the extent that Kellogg, first of all, is going to attract more tech recruiters, that already makes it easier than Yale, which may not attract so many recruiters. So what's the point of being a big fish in a small pond if you don't even get in front of that recruiter to begin with?
Right.
And at the end of the day, like, look, if you go to a team, let's say I'm Apple and I do go to Yale to recruit, and I've got 5 open spots, and there are 5 people at Yale that knock my socks off, all 5 of them are going to get the job. You're not necessarily you're sort of competing against your classmates for the job, but it's not a direct head-to-head competition. It's like, I'm Apple, I have 50 MBA internships available this summer. I need to allocate them across different schools. But if there are 5 people at one school that are just amazing, I'm going to give them the job because I want the best people in my company so that my company will make more money. It's pretty simple. So that whole thing of like, I'll be a big fish in a small pond, don't do that. Pick Yale for other reasons, but not for that reason.
I also think that the whole concept of like, being in an elite school is even less relevant in tech because, I've seen MBA classes in different companies and the range of schools is incredible. Like, for example, at Apple, I saw people from HBS, a ton of people from Sloan and Kellogg, but I also saw a lot of people from Tepper, and CMU is one of Apple's target schools. So, it doesn't really matter which school you go to in terms of tech, as long as that school is within that company's radar, the company that you want to go to. The other thing, though, like, look, there's a lot of people who apply to business school programs. So being one of a class of, let's say, 300, where you're still competing hypothetically with 300 really smart people versus competing with 500 really smart people, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's not big of a difference to make an impact on being able to stand out. You'll be able to stand out with your experience and your resume and your accomplishments, not because there are fewer people around your area. So I agree with you. I do not think that's helpful.
And your experience actually having recently worked at a large tech company, a very coveted and exciting tech company, and seeing those internship results, I think is really, really valuable for people to understand. Sometimes people are like, well, I only got into UT Austin, and I'm like, that's awesome. Or UCLA, like there are so many schools that have amazing pathways into not just tech, right, but like real estate or that you don't automatically think of. UCLA has a great healthcare program and a great real estate program that people don't think of. And so this is, again, when we had our last video where we were sort of bashing the rankings a little, I think for good reason, because I think people get so obsessed with the rankings that they're like, oh, for example, UT Austin is only ranked whatever, but it's in Austin. Austin is one of the most like up and coming tech cities in the country. It also has a nice cost of living. It's also very nice weather. Like, it's not a bad place to go live your life and get. Huh?
And the food. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, right? Music. I mean, it's a great place to live. And so if you want to go into tech, it's not like, oh, you have to go to MIT, Stanford, or Sloan, or whatever, and then or it's not a binary thing, I think is what I'm trying to say. It's not like you go to these schools and you get guaranteed a tech job, and you go to these other schools and it's zero. Right? It's a spectrum. It's so you can definitely break into tech. And I do think that the people don't realize that these big employers are looking at they just want the best talent again. So if they have to go to a couple of different schools that maybe you don't think they go to, but they do in fact recruit from, like it's definitely doable. So thank you for that, Souvik, for that insight.
Thanks, Maria. No, I totally agree with you. By the way, we're sort of ending to our close. We are like almost 40 minutes in. Just drop a like to the video. It really helps us reaching out to more people. Subscribe to the video. It helps you when videos like this get notified. And just so that everybody knows, I'm doing a video on Sunday about the cost of business school. I'm going to shoot the breeze with my roommates about what business schools really cost, which I think is very different from the figures that schools put out as the total cost of attendance, I guess.
Is it a lot higher in real life?
A lot higher, a double-digit percentage higher. But I also think it's manageable in a way where you can control a lot of your experiences and you can control a fair amount of what you're putting your money in. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to just wait around for, maybe a few minutes for questions. Please let us know if you have any questions. Somebody just told me that they connected with you, Maria, on LinkedIn. And Yeah. Used planning to use Applicant Lab for the Rotman application.
Great. Rotman, another great program, by the way, that sometimes people are like, it's not on their radar screen, but oh my gosh. I mean, Toronto is a wonderful city. Canada has much better visa and work residency visa options in the US. They've got a great design lab up there in Rotman. I toured it a couple summers ago. So Awesome. Cool, Jasper. Reach out if you have any questions.
Awesome. Somebody is also asking about the HBS MS MBA in biotech program. So just so you know, a lot of schools would give you options for dual degrees, and it's very, very different across the board. Like, for example, Ross has a bunch of different dual degrees, one with the MSN School of Information, one with the MSN Sustainability, with the ORB School of Sustainability, and one with Tauber, which is more focused on operations. So it's I'm fairly certain MIT has a dual degree with healthcare in general, but I'm not sure about biotech. But just research dual degree programs. And also a flip side to dual degree is you don't need to always have a formal degree to do a specialization in a particular field. So you can always go to business schools and take classes from other schools within the university and learn whatever you can without having to spend more money or without having to spend more time in that school. Any thoughts on that, Maria?
Absolutely. So yeah, I think, I don't know off the top of my head anyone else who does a dual degree with specifically biotechnology, but I'm sure that they're out there, number one. And to your point, I was actually recently talking to an Applicant Lab user who got into some MBA, MPH programs, right? Like the Kennedy School, and some of the other famous, not MPH, sorry, I meant to say MPA, but also an MPH. I also was talking to someone who got into MPH program. And so for Masters of Public Administration, right, that's sort of like political people who want to work in government perhaps one day. And I was like, look, for example, at Wharton, they actually have like a ton of electives that are very similar to MPA program electives. So to your point, Shovik, like you don't necessarily have to have a degree in biotechnology to go work in biotech. And then if you say, well, but I need the master's degree in biotech because I need to learn how to research recombinant DNA, whatever, then maybe you shouldn't go to business school, right? You only get one life. There are, unfortunately, a limited number of hours in the day. It's very rare that you are going to be able to both become a biotechnology researcher uncovering the cure for COVID-19 and also doing business development deals, right? So I'm pretty skeptical of the value of dual degrees in most cases. I just think the ROI there is not, I don't think you need it as much as people sometimes perhaps think they do. So, and again, like if you're like, no, but you don't understand, Maria, I really need that master's in engineering to do whatever. Well, then maybe that's where your heart is more. And then maybe that's the master's that you pursue. And then you do like a part-time certificate in business management 5 years from now.
Awesome. Maria, you have a fan club. I just wanted to put this on. There's a lot of fans.
Hi, Ishan. How are you doing?
I got a question around something that we sort of touched on in our last video about. I'm sorry, this is not the right question. About applying to Kellogg, which has sort of waived its GMAT recs, and I know you have an opinion, which is just go ahead and apply. What's the problem? But I just want to get into a little bit of nuance to this. So this is also in addition to the fact that they are sort of reopening their box for waitlisted and rejected applicants, which to me is a little bit strange because when you waive your GMAT recs for round 3, you're sort of giving this vibe to the world that keep applying, and we will take you, sort of. However, when you go back to the people you've already rejected and said, hey, by the way, you can apply too, which sort of then it gives the vibe that, oh, the new round 3 people, we were not really serious about you applying. So that's just sort of my weird, debatable take on it. But what do you think, Maria?
Oh my God. I don't think Kellogg is real. And for a branding and marketing school, and I love the people at Kellogg, right? I mean, again, as I'm a member of this elite admissions consultant organization named AGAC. So once a year, we actually meet with admissions officers and we get to know them, right? And so I love the team at Kellogg. I think they're so friendly, right? Shocking. Yeah. But even the admissions team is super friendly. And but I do think that this idea of we're going to go back and revisit the previously rejected people. I understand why, right? I think there's this idea that people are saying like, oh, well, now Kellogg is lowering its standards, and I don't think that's true. If Kellogg, right, because if they turn away multiple people who are equally qualified, who are equally impressive every year, but who for whatever reason they just turned down in round one. Yeah. So I don't think that reopening to previously rejected candidates necessarily means that they are diluting the quality of the class. However, the way in which it's been sort of communicated, I think it gives that impression. So I don't know, but Kellogg, you guys need to start really managing the PR aspect of this and making it very obvious to people. You know, yesterday I was talking to another admissions consultant, and I said, look, I think the best thing Kellogg can do is if their average GMAT score does not go down as a result of this exercise, right? If all of a sudden they go from say 730 to a 700, then it's going to be very blatantly clear that, oh, they really did lower their standards, didn't they? Yikes. But so first of all, just this, I know, Banu, this is not your question. I'm going to get to your question in a second. But anyway, I just think Kellogg needs to start very aggressively signaling to the market right now, like, no, this doesn't mean that we're letting in people with a 420, you know. And so first, so in terms of, there's nuance, Shovik, you're right. So my general take is I think people who are on the fence, I think go ahead and apply in round 3. I think there's very limited downside. I do think, though, that international students need to be aware of the fact that, first of all, they may not let you in because they might say, well, even if we let him in, he's not going to get the student visa in time. Right. Or you might get let in and then you can't get the student visa in time, and so you can't enroll. So I do think for international students, I do think it will be harder to get in this round 3, because I do think that the logistical aspects of, if we let this person in, can they enroll in August, is going to be part of it. Now, that won't be part of it if the schools go all virtual next fall, right? So it's like this whole, like, you know, it's I made a blog post the other day that had sort of like a little flow chart of, you know, if they can't get the student visa, then that means they can't attend. But if they can't get the student visa and the classes go online, they still can attend. So since you don't know what's going to happen, I don't know, nobody knows what's going to happen. You know, maybe they'll invent a device that puts sunshine inside your body and you can start injecting yourself with Lysol, which I don't know if you caught that news clip yesterday. I did. So I think that's you know, very promising medical treatment. And so maybe that'll happen, right? And maybe this will all be behind it. So my take on it is go ahead and apply. I don't think you've got anything to lose. Maybe you'll get in and maybe you can't attend because of visa issues, or maybe you will get in and you can attend because they'll move everything online. Who knows? They don't know. We don't know. So my take on it is, you know, I don't know if it's favorable for you to apply, but it's certainly not unfavorable. So I think go for it.
Yeah, no, I also just learned yesterday that if and when you take the GMAT online, it doesn't really go on your score report. So it's almost like a GMAT that really didn't happen. So I would say even if there's a waiver, I would recommend taking the GMAT. But what if you score really well and compare like a 730 during this online GMAT era, which is a great score, by the way, kudos if you're even close to that, versus somebody who waived the GMAT. Waiving the GMAT would automatically mean either you didn't take the GMAT or you have a low score. So you having a good score, presumably, would probably give you an edge. I don't know. So,
yeah, and I do think it shows the admissions office, like, look, I'm really committed to going to business school. I took this pain in the behind at-home test. Like, look at how badly I want it. But I do think, as per our last session, I think we were talking a little bit about maybe switching to the GRE. Like, if you're going to plan to take the test in the early summer and you've been prepping for the GMAT at this point, if you sort of experiment a little bit with that online, like using your mouse to try to write your notes to yourself, and if that's just not working for you, it might be better, instead of trying to teach yourself to use the online whiteboard, it might be better to actually transition to studying for the GRE. I think the GMAT Ninja gave that advice, and that was really valuable advice. So that's another thing you might want to consider.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm getting a question about what went wrong during my application process that I didn't end up in M7. What
Oh.
would I have done differently?
Well, aren't we making some bold assumptions?
We are a little bit presumable.
IUHMAZEXC. He did end up in an M7.
Anyway, the point of the question, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that like your business school application and outcomes are very questionably logical processes. You will find out that a lot of people in your class are way smarter than you, and you are probably smarter than a few people in your class. And regardless of whichever school you go to, that's going to happen. So it's not like you go to a school like Georgetown and suddenly you're the smartest cookie in that class. That's just not true. So business school applications are weirder than you would think. Business school acceptances are even weirder. So ask me on the forum and I'll be able to be more detailed.
But he did get into an M7, in case you're wondering.
Time for another day. But anyway, thank you guys so much.
I'm proud of you. I want people to know.
Yes, and I work with Maria a lot, and I do think that I made the right call. I don't even think about that anymore. So it was good. Okay, so thank you so much for joining. And by the way, this person says that no ill intentions. I completely believe you. It's an app. I also think that with Maria, I would often ask her absolutely weirdly worded questions. I'm a big fan of assuming the best intentions. Awesome. So thank you guys so much for joining. We're getting questions now, but I'm sorry, we're really out of time. Feel free to tune in on Sunday. We'll talk about business schools and expenses. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys again next week. Thank you so much, Maria, for spending time here with us.
Thanks for having me. Everyone, give the video a like. Put your questions below, and I'll try to answer them, or Shobhik can try to answer them. And
yeah, so just so you know, I think a lot of people know this, but I'm just going to reiterate this. Once the video is streamed, which takes about 6-7 hours for YouTube, the live chat will still be there, but you'll also have the options to throw in comments, ask questions, and I've seen Maria actually jumping back in and answering some of those questions. So feel free to do that, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.